I'm a creative performance coach. I help creative entrepreneurs and leaders and professionals get stuck, build momentum towards their goals so that achieving them becomes inevitable. And essentially, one of the ways I do this is by helping people apply more flow into their work, into their lives, to get that experience. Flow is kind of a main motivator that I seek out in my work. I know it can help me with my productivity, my focus, my efficiency, with my creativity, especially. So I'm very passionate about the subject. And with flow, I think there's a big opportunity to integrate this into our habits, right? So a lot of the clients I work with, they want to build new habits, right? Like there's a big craze around habits. Like let's build atomic habits, let's build tiny habits, let's build supercharged habits. Like let's build a morning routine with 20 habits in that, and an evening routine, and everything about habits right now is really popular, and it makes sense. Like habits are very effective. They help us build momentum, they help us experience and feel that momentum towards our goals. Like even if our goals are unclear and fuzzy, which a lot of times our creative goals are, or our career goals, or especially if we're in a transition, they are a bit fuzzy. Habits we can always turn to them to kind of get grounded and feel like we're making progress and experiencing that momentum. But a lot of times habits, we drop them, right? We don't stick with them. And I think one of the reasons because that happens is because we're missing out an opportunity to kind of put a flow lens onto our habits. And today I wanted to talk about that with you guys. So I'm gonna try to bring my slides back up again. Not sure what was happening there, but let's just try it again. So in the chat, like I've asked you guys to share where you're from, but I'm really curious. I want to make this interactive. I want to see if we can help you guys specifically, at least one or two of you, but type in the chat, like, what are your biggest struggles with your habits? Consistency. Okay. Thanks for sharing, Suzanne. And Suzanne, is there a specific habit that you're struggling with? Okay, not seeing results in a month. Okay, thanks, Joe. And yeah, if there's a specific habit too, okay, movement, exercise, like feel free to share that too, like so we can focus in on something specific and tangible for you. Cooking meals at home, nice. Too regimented and not able to get into the flow. Interesting. Understanding which habits I truly need. Fitting all the routines into your day when your schedule fluctuates a lot. Yep, that's a common struggle, right? How many routines are you talking about there? Yeah. Taking on too many things. Okay, similar, right? Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so these are some good ones. And these are some common problems, right? You get really excited about the habits you're doing. You try to do 10 of them at once, right? Or you're trying to stay consistent. You're not seeing results, become unengaging after a bit. 3 to 4 months of incredible success, then fall off the wagon. Okay. Michael, do you have a specific example of a habit you've had for that? Where you had incredible success, but then kind of just fell off? Getting into the work quickly after interruptions. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for sharing that. Thinking, yeah, we can share this along the way. So thanks for your engagement with this. So yeah, these are some common struggles, right? You lose the motivation, they're working well, but then you just kind of stop, you get stale, you're trying to do too much. So maybe they feel fragmented. Sometimes you're not even sure if you really actually need that habit, right? Like, or is it just something you're trying to do? Oh, hey, Enrique, how's it going? Yeah, another checkbox. Yeah, these are all great. So, I mean, you all probably know what flow is if you're here. You probably experienced it in some part of your life or some time. Maybe you experience it frequently, maybe infrequently. Maybe that's why you're here. But yeah, essentially, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi one of my mentors, he describes flow as this. So being so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The ego falls away, time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved and you're using your skills to the utmost. So I really love this metaphor of jazz. I'm a musician myself, so I really resonate with the jazz improvisation. Like you're playing within a framework, there's some structure, but it's not too structured, it's not too regimented. There is that space for freedom and experimentation and exploration. But yeah, other people describe flow like as that total involvement and absorption, right? You're in the zone, you're on fire, you're not thinking about how people are judging you. There's that complete loss of self-consciousness. Time flies or slows down like you're in the Matrix almost. You have that autotelic experience, which really means you're enjoying the process. You're doing it really just because you love doing it, not because you're trying to achieve a specific outcome necessarily. And then after these experiences, you feel good. You feel like you've grown, you've accomplished something. So specifically though, there's multiple elements of flow, that they've used to describe flow or indicators of flow. But I think these four, especially the first two, are most relevant when it comes to turning your habits into flow experiences. And I'll try to put this in the context of some of your specific things here, but also as I'm bringing these up, share what's coming to mind for you in the chat too, or any questions you're having. So these flow elements, this challenge skill balance, enjoyment, clear goals or rules, and clear immediate feedback. These are the things I think are most helpful when trying to apply flow into your habits here. So the first one, I think the most powerful flow lever or element is this idea of challenge by skill. So you can ask yourself, is this habit, is this activity challenging? Does it fully activate my skills? So one of the reasons, for me personally, if I drop off a habit, it's usually because I get bored with it or it gets stale or I'm not feeling that engagement. So like this flow chart, you see that flow channel up in the middle, anxiety, the top, boredom at the bottom. This is a good thing to kind of just ask yourself about your habits, right? Like, am I bored with this habit? Right? If you're feeling bored with something you're doing, that's a really strong indicator that you need to change the challenge level, right? It's become too easy for you. So you're missing out on a flow opportunity by keeping your habits the same over time, right? We get this notion of having habits as, consistency, yes, but just keeping them too consistent, too the same, that's going to cause you to become disengaged, to become bored over time and drop that habit. So one of the biggest things I see in my clients is that, right? Like we get too fixated on the habit has to be the same. It has to be 5 minutes a day, or it has to be this specific sequence a day, or it has to be exactly like this every day. No, to bring more flow into it, most of the time, you actually need to increase the challenge or complexity little by little as you go with that habit. So if you're starting off with meditating for 5 minutes, you need to bring that up. If you're playing guitar, right? For me, like a habit with the guitar might be to increase the tempo of the practice, the little specific studies that I'm practicing. Otherwise, I'm just getting bored. I'm not developing my skills. And that's another question to ask yourself too with the habits. Like, are you developing your skills or not with it? Right? Like habits, they should be developmental towards getting better or sharpening your skills or sharpening your focus or your health or your creativity, your ability to do something if you're looking to bring more flow into it. Another thing, so some people mentioned taking on too many things, right? So that would be, perhaps the challenge is too high. Like you're starting off too high and whether you're consciously or subconsciously, you're feeling anxious about it, right? It's too much. And so because of that, you just discard it, right? Like we want to biologically, psychologically we want to move away from anxiety. So a lot of times I see people saying, hey, I want to start some new habits. Yeah, I'd like to do this morning routine that has 20 different things one after the other. And that hardly ever works, right? Like it's too much. It's too much. Knitting, okay. Yeah, trying new projects too. Yeah, so that's a great example, Suzanne. So like sometimes you do need to do something different with that habit. So maybe if it's with knitting, right? Like you're not knitting the same thing every time, but you're you're trying a new project there. Same with exercise. Perhaps you're doing a new workout, or with guitar or music, you're trying a new technique or new style of music. Or with meditation, maybe it's a different type of meditation. Maybe you're sitting differently. What other ideas do you guys have around this? Yeah, the habit, that's a good point, Alexander. So the habit, yeah, if the habit's not evolving as you're evolving, you're not going to stick with it, right? You're going to move into this boredom level, right? And that's usually where the habits drop off, is especially with creative people, right? Like we get bored with them. We don't see those results. You're not seeing those results anymore, after 3 to 4 months, because you need to do something different. You need to evolve them either incrementally along the way or sometimes radically, right? To get into that flow experience, to get into that zone. Any questions about this chart, or any ideas you guys are coming up with around like how you could apply this kind of way of thinking to what you're doing? Yeah, yoga. How would you apply it to yoga? Yeah, and if you're, yeah, perhaps like some of you who are leaders, who are managing people, who have teams, like maybe you're building a habit of giving feedback or recognition or coaching other people in your organization. This is a really good opportunity too to kind of add more layers or complexity or try new things out. A lot of times, a really good way to increase the challenge level and get more into flow is just to ask yourself this question, like, what's an experiment I could try with this? Is there one little variable in this that I could tweak, right? So with yoga, maybe it's something with your breath, or maybe it's the room you're in, or the temperature, or the technique. With leadership, maybe it's a certain phrase you're going to try out, or a certain type of language, certain question you're going to ask if you're building a habit of feedback. Or exercise, maybe you're just tweaking the weight variable or the time variable. Yeah, holding a stretch further. So yeah, I would love if your ideas are coming up for you, like please apply them here. I'm also going to just put in my email here. You can just, so anyone can connect with me after the session with their ideas if you want to continue the conversation further. I have just like a free mini course thing that touches upon elements of habits and flow and stuff that I'm putting the link here too. But let's move on to kind of the next element that I think is kind of the second most important thing for turning habits into flow experiences, and that's this notion of enjoyment. So flow experiences are intrinsically motivating, right? They're that flow activity because doing it is engaging, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's focusing, it's exhilarating, and it just gives us that state of experience that we don't get elsewhere. So it's less about achieving that outcome, right? Like getting the gold sticker. It's more about the process of doing it. So a lot of times people, they're doing habits that they feel like they should do or have to do in order to achieve this, right? And there's nothing wrong with having that anchor as that goal, but like this is the question you should ask yourself when trying to design your habits for more flow. It's like, is this something I actually want to do? And then corresponding with that, how do I make this something more that I want to do? How can I enjoy this more? So it's not just something I'm waking up every day feeling like I have to do or I should do. Especially if you can identify as more of a creative person or independent entrepreneurial person, like naturally we don't like doing things that we have to do or should do, right? There's a point where subconsciously, I know this happens for me, if things get stale, like if things keep feeling like something I should do, part of me just wants to rebel against it and say, forget that, I'm doing this, you know? So, but if it's something I want to do, I can wake up every day and do it and sustain it. So if you're combining this element with that, especially with that challenge skill lens, like how can I use this habit to, how can I boost the habit of this skill or this habit, or how can I, tweak this habit to build my skill a little bit more, plus this enjoyment lens, that is really going to kind of supercharge your habits, the effectiveness of them, but also just how you sustain them. So does anyone have this experience? Do you feel like your habits are something you should do because you read about it in a book or something, or are they something you actually want to do? Share with me in the chat. Let's see, not coming through quite yet. Some of both. Okay. Yeah, Wansha, do you notice anything? And yeah, do you notice a difference in the engagement or your experience with the habits that you want to do versus the habits you should do? What do you notice? Yeah. Yeah, there's that resistance. So it makes things harder when there is that resistance there. So if you're noticing resistance, this usually comes down to this element. And again, like here, like what can you experiment with? What can you test out? Just because you read you should do this habit in a book, or this is a habit of high performers, or this is the miracle morning habit, like you need to do it like this, it's not always going to work for you. But if you ask yourself, how can I make this more enjoyable? How can I make this more in something I want to do? Right. And it could be as simple as doing it to a certain playlist of songs, or it could be the time of day, or it could be maybe you ask yourself this question and you just realize, actually, this habit isn't something I want to do or really need it. Or maybe there's something completely different that you can do that will give you the same experience or better, or kind of be aligned to that same goal. Yeah, need to work on focusing on the wants. Yeah. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. So yeah, again, like of all the elements of flow for habits, like this challenge skill balance and this enjoyment, I think are the most critical, the most powerful for applying flow into habits. There's other elements of flow, of course, but this is what I see as most useful to you guys, and it simplifies things as well. And it's going to probably at 80-20, right? It's like 80% of what's not working with your habits may come down to these elements of flow, these kind of dials to tap into. There's a few other things that you can also put through this lens of flow, like clear goals or rules, right? So this often comes down to getting more specific, right? Like really defining what you're doing for that habit. Like, can you make it more gamified? Can you make it so it's less about, this ambiguous thing, but more into like something that you're making progress on, which just kind of goes into this element of clear, immediate feedback, right? So for me, like one of the habits I'm working on or was working on, I was doing a lot of vocal exercises because I was filming some online courses just the other day. So I wanted to strengthen my vocal cords, my control over my intonation and all that stuff. So I could see myself, based on these tracks that I was practicing to, I had clear feedback on whether I was in tune. on my range. So each session I could really see like how well I was doing, and that was motivating. So rather than just doing this all by myself, I kind of had a support track, right? That I could measure my progress against. That's a good example, Alexander. Should I really be doing that? Yeah. And that comes down to it too, right? Like as part of this clear goals or rules as well, right? Like you don't necessarily want to just do a lot of habits just to have a lot of habits. Like, yeah, what's that intention? What's that direction you're going towards? Like, do you see some kind of end state? Like for me, with the vocal exercises, I wanted to just simply kind of get the best performance on camera as possible when doing it, and come across as enthusiastic and all that stuff. So I had like kind of a vision in mind um, for that, and so it was meaningful to me to have this habit aligned, connected to that goal. It's purposeful. It wasn't just a random thing. Like I don't have a lot of habits where I'm doing a lot of morning routine stuff that's unless it's kind of tied into something bigger, something more meaningful for me, like getting better as a coach or getting better as a musician or a presenter, right? Like I think it can help ground these habits in that kind of very intrinsically meaningful goal as well. Yeah, it can definitely help have that connection. That's going to keep you motivated because yeah, we're all going to run across roadblocks. We're all going to get derailed, and that's another part too. Like with this clear goals or rules, like one idea to think of is like, what's my minimum dose of this habit, right? How do I make this easy to start? What's the smallest, most specific version of this? So when life does get tricky and tough, instead of maybe doing a 30-minute session of whatever your habit is, you can do 5 minutes of it, right? So one of my clients, he's really into breath work, and ideally he'd be doing 20 minutes of it. But his schedule gets crazy, like he's a leader, it's unpredictable sometimes, but he knows he can do at least 3 minutes of breath work when he gets home at night. He doesn't necessarily know when he's going to get home, but having that idea of I need to do 30 minutes of this prevented him from doing it at all. But having it 3 minutes kind of gives him that clear entry point, can dive into it, and it helps him stay consistent even when life is crazy, right? Because this life is always going to get crazy. So we have like maybe one more minute here. I'm not sure if we're going to get shut down or not, but wanted to say thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for your participation, your questions. I'm going to type my email in here again. So please, like if you have any more questions around this, like there's a lot of stuff we can go into more. Ask me, yeah. Email me, ask me, connect with me. I have some more tips around flow in this free mini course thing that I just dropped in this link. It's a 4-day mini course. It's free. Like we'll kind of walk you through 4 different pillars of creating momentum in your creative work. So around kind of identifying and amplifying your goal, creating momentum and habits, getting unstuck kind of with like psychologically, like growing your creative confidence and mindset, and then some just like real practical time management and flow, like how to bring more of that into what you're doing. You'll see that at that link. But yeah, thanks again for sharing your examples. Hope to connect with you guys in the future again. Email me, connect with me. I'm here to support you guys. I'm very passionate about flow and creativity and leadership. So yeah, let's stay connected, and thanks so much for your time, guys. Hope you guys got at least one thing that was useful to you. Have a great day, guys. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of the sessions.